Rocky IV wasn't just a boxing movie. It was Cold War mythology dressed in sweat and synth drums. A film where politics bled into every punch, where propaganda became personal, and where one death changed the rules of engagement. Sylvester Stallone nearly died filming it. Dolph Lundgren was built in a lab of method acting and Soviet symbolism. The opening match designed as theater, not sport. The cabin stripped of every modern comfort. These are 20 hidden details you completely missed in Rocky IV. Number 1. The opening match is political theater. Apollo Creed versus Ivan Drago wasn't conceived as a sporting event. It was staged as diplomatic showcase, complete with flags, cameras, and Cold War symbolism. Sylvester Stallone framed the event as international theater, with James Brown performing Living in America as Apollo descended from the ceiling, wrapped in stars and stripes. The film tells you immediately this won't follow boxing rules. This is politics wearing gloves. Apollo's entrance is pure American bravado, designed to humiliate the Soviets before a punch is thrown. Drago's handlers stand silent, watching, calculating. The crowd roars not for sport, but for ideology. Every camera angle emphasizes spectacle over safety, propaganda over protection. The opening isn't a boxing match, it's a declaration of intent from both sides. Number 2, Drago never enters like a boxer. Every American fighter in the Rocky franchise walks, waves, acknowledges the crowd. Drago arrives rigid, silent, escorted like military hardware being transported to a test site. Dolph Lundgren was instructed by Stallone to eliminate all natural movement, to walk like a man who'd been programmed rather than trained. The crowd doesn't cheer, they stare in uneasy silence. Drago's handlers flank him like security detail, never smiling, never relaxing. Wide shots emphasize his isolation even in crowded spaces. Close-ups reveal eyes that don't blink, don't wander, don't engage. His face remains expressionless, a mask of calculated control that refuses to register emotion or humanity. He's been stripped of personality and rebuilt as pure function. He's introduced as hardware, not human. Number 3, Sylvester Stallone almost died from a filming accident. During production, Stallone asked Dolph Lundgren to punch him for real to capture authentic impact. One hit caused Stallone's heart to swell against his ribs, a condition called pericardial effusion that required immediate hospitalization. He spent 4 days in intensive care while doctors monitored whether his heart would stabilize or require emergency surgery. The damage is why many punches in the final fight looked genuinely painful, because they were. Stallone later admitted he'd underestimated Lundgren's strength. That brutality you see on screen isn't performance or special effects. It's real trauma captured on film stock. Stallone's face during certain exchanges shows legitimate distress, the kind actors can't fake. The near-death experience forced production to halt for over a week, while Stallone recovered enough to continue filming. Number 4, Apollo never looks at Rocky before his death. Throughout the entire Drago fight, Apollo Creed locks eyes with his opponent, never once turning toward Rocky in his corner. It reinforces this was Apollo's decision alone, his fight, his pride, his consequences. Rocky isn't given closure or acknowledgement. Apollo passes looking at Drago, not at his friend, and that unresolved connection fuels Rocky's guilt for the entire film. Carl Weathers played the scene with tunnel vision, refusing to break focus even when Stallone called cut. You keep waiting for Apollo to glance toward Rocky to signal regret or reassurance, but it never comes. Even as Apollo collapses to the canvas, his gaze remains locked forward, never seeking his friend's eyes. He dies alone in his choice, and Rocky is left standing in a corner, helpless and ignored. Number 5, Rocky's guilt drives the entire film. Rocky doesn't fight Drago purely for revenge. He fights because he didn't stop the match when he could have, because he let Apollo walk into a slaughter he knew was coming. Every training montage is fueled by hesitation and regret, not rage. Rocky IV is a movie about delayed action, about a man punishing himself for failing to intervene. Stallone wrote Rocky's arc as penance disguised as preparation. The training isn't about getting stronger, it's about earning the right to face what he allowed to happen. Rocky barely speaks about Apollo's death directly, but his body language tells the story. Slumped shoulders, hollow stares, moments where he stops mid-exercise and just breathes. Rocky isn't stepping into the ring to win, he's stepping into a tone. Number 6, Drago speaks less as he becomes more dangerous. Early in the film, Drago says almost nothing, standing silent while his wife and trainers speak for him. Later, he utters only one calculated line asserting dominance. The less he talks, the more power he's given by those around him. Silence isn't weakness in Drago's world, it's authority. Dolph Lundgren worked with Stallone to strip away unnecessary dialogue, believing Drago's power came from withholding rather than projecting. His handlers treat his silence as professionalism, but it's also control. They speak for him because they own him. The few words he does say land with brutal efficiency. When Drago finally speaks for himself near the end, breaking script and rejecting his handlers, the shift is seismic. Silence was never his choice. It was their weapon. Number 7, the Soviet lab is shot like a prison. Bright fluorescent lights, sterile white walls, no windows. Drago's training facility feels more like confinement than preparation. Cinematographer Bill Butler framed every shot to emphasize isolation, using long empty corridors and cold overhead lighting that drains color from every surface. Drago is watched constantly, monitored by scientists in lab coats who treat him like an experiment rather than an athlete. The contrast with Rocky's outdoor cabin training is intentional and brutal. One man trains in nature, the other in a laboratory. The Soviet facility has no personality, just efficiency and measurement. Drago lifts weights surrounded by machines that track every metric. He's owned long before he's defeated. The prison isn't locked from the outside, it's built into the system itself. Number 8, Adrian's speech is the emotional turning point. Rocky doesn't transform after Apollo's death or after arriving in Russia. He changes only after Adrian flies across the world to confront him about why he's really fighting. She reframes the entire mission, stripping away patriotism and revenge to reveal the truth underneath. Rocky isn't fighting for America or Apollo. He's fighting to prove to himself he's not a coward. Adrian's speech is the film's emotional axis. Talia Shire delivered the monologue in one continuous take, her voice shaking with genuine emotion. Stallone didn't rehearse the scene extensively because he wanted raw performance. When she finishes, Rocky finally admits the truth. He's terrified, not of Drago, of himself. That's when Rocky actually starts winning. The fight becomes personal survival instead of public spectacle. Number 9, Stallone trained for weeks before filming the cabin scenes. The physical transformation you see wasn't achieved through movie magic. Stallone followed the exact brutal routine shown in the montage for weeks before cameras rolled. The exhaustion on his face isn't acting, it's the genuine end of real training sessions. Stallone chopped wood, pulled sleds, climbed mountains, and ran through snow in sub-freezing temperatures. His body fat percentage dropped dangerously low. The production shot the training sequences chronologically, so Stallone's physical decline would be visible. The crew documented his weight dropping from 173 pounds to 155 pounds over the course of filming. The beard growth is real. The weight loss is real. The shaking hands and labored breathing are real. Number 10. Paulie's robot represents American excess. The robot given to Paulie as a birthday gift isn't just comic relief, it's the film's quiet critique of American obsession with novelty and comfort. While Rocky suffers in freezing isolation, Paulie sits home programming a machine to bring him drinks. The juxtaposition is deliberate. Stallone included the robot subplot to show how America had grown soft, valuing convenience over sacrifice. Paulie doesn't train, he doesn't prepare. He medicates his feelings with technology and alcohol while Rocky bleeds in the snow. Burt Young was directed to play Paulie as increasingly detached from reality, using the robot as a crutch to avoid facing Apollo's death. The robot becomes a symbol of everything Rocky is fighting against, not just Soviet ideology, but American complacency. Number 11. Most of Rocky's training equipment were real Soviet tools. The logs, chains, sleds, and iron weights weren't Hollywood props. They were actual Soviet-era farm and industrial tools sourced from the filming locations. Stallone trained with equipment meant for labor, not athletics, creating a visual contrast to Drago's polished machines. Production designers scoured rural areas for authentic period equipment. Nothing was manufactured specifically for the film. The harness he wears to drag the sled was designed for horses, not humans, and left actual bruises across Stallone's chest and shoulders. The axe he uses was decades old and deliberately left dull to force more effort per swing. Even the wooden yoke Rocky carries across his shoulders was salvaged from an abandoned farm, its uneven weight causing genuine strain visible in every step. Every piece of equipment made the training harder, slower, more painful. Number 12. Rocky's posture changes after Apollo's death. Before Apollo dies, Rocky stands upright, relaxed, confident. Afterward, his shoulders slump forward, his movement slow, and his gaze drops. Stallone subtly altered his entire physical performance to show Rocky carrying grief in his body, not just his dialogue. The change is visible in how he walks, how he sits, how he holds himself. Rocky becomes smaller, quieter, more closed off. Even during training montages, his posture remains defensive, hunched against invisible blows. Stallone worked with a movement coach to identify how trauma changes body language. The physical transformation is more dramatic than any dialogue could convey. Rocky looks defeated before the fight even begins. The posture doesn't fully correct until the final round, when Rocky finally forgives himself enough to stand tall again. Number 13. The cabin was chosen to strip Rocky of modern comfort. The remote wooden structure wasn't selected for aesthetics alone. Scenes were filmed in sub-freezing temperatures, often around 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit, with no modern heating equipment inside the cabin. Stallone wanted Rocky cold, stiff, uncomfortable, and exhausted on camera. The cast and crew slept slept in the unheated cabin between takes, wrapped in blankets. The shivering, labored breathing, and slow movements visible on screen aren't performance choices, they're a body reacting to real deprivation. Stallone refused portable heaters near the set, insisting that comfort would undermine the thematic point. Rocky needed to look like a man stripped to essentials, surviving rather than thriving. The suffering was real, the transformation was earned. Number 14, Drago's wife is his handler. Ludmilla Drago doesn't behave like a spouse. She speaks for him in press conferences, corrects his posture, watches his every movement like a supervisor. Her role is closer to government handler than romantic partner. When Drago begins to rebel, asserting his own voice, she disappears from his corner entirely. Brigitte Nielsen played Ludmilla with cold authority, treating Drago like property she's been assigned to manage. Every interaction between them is transactional, performance-based, conditional on his compliance. She doesn't comfort him after brutal training sessions. She evaluates his performance and delivers criticism. The marriage is theater, arranged by the state. You can see the resentment in how he avoids her gaze, how he flinches when she touches him. She's not his wife, she's his warden. Number 15, the Soviet crowd changes before the politicians. During the final fight, regular Soviet citizens in the upper bleachers begin cheering for Rocky before any government officials acknowledge the shift. The film suggests people change faster than systems. That grassroots sentiment moves quicker than institutional policy. Stallone frames shots to show the crowd's transformation spreading from the back rows forward, a visual wave that eventually overwhelms even the party members in the front. Soviet citizens aren't brainwashed automatons. They're people capable of recognizing courage when they see it. The officials sit frozen, uncertain how to respond, while the crowd around them erupts. By the final round, even hardline communist observers are standing and applauding. The Cold War isn't dismantled by politicians in the film's logic, it's cracked by ordinary people. Number 16, Drago's final lines are a rebellion. When Drago says, near the end of the match, the statement quietly shatters the entire propaganda machine built around him. For the first time, he rejects the politicians, trainers, and nationalistic rhetoric using him as a symbol. The fight stops being USA versus USSR and becomes one man reclaiming his own identity. Dolph Lundgren delivered the line with exhausted defiance, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying weight. The words aren't shouted, they're confessed. Drago isn't declaring victory, he's declaring independence. His wife walks away, his trainers turn their backs. The system that built him abandons him the second he stops serving its purpose. The rebellion isn't physical, it's existential, a man choosing himself over ideology. Number 17, Rocky loses the fight on paper. By traditional scoring and points, Drago dominates almost every round. He lands more punches, controls more of the ring, and inflicts more visible damage. Rocky only wins through endurance and sheer refusal to stay down. The film deliberately values resilience over technical skill, suggesting that winning means lasting longer, not hitting harder. Stallone choreographed the fight to show Rocky absorbing punishment that would hospitalize any real boxer, then continuing anyway. The scorecards don't matter because the fight isn't about boxing anymore. It's about philosophy. Drago represents perfection. Rocky represents persistence. Rocky doesn't knock Drago out with superior technique. He breaks him psychologically by refusing to quit. Every time Rocky stands back up, Drago's confidence fractures. Rocky wins by surviving. Number 18, Drago's defeat is internal, not physical. Drago doesn't lose because Rocky knocks him unconscious. He loses because he chooses to keep standing without the system's support, fighting as himself rather than as a weapon. Once he rejects the injections, the training protocols, and the handlers, the fight transforms from system versus system to man versus man. That's the moment the film considers him redeemed. Drago stops fighting for the Soviet Union and starts fighting for himself, which paradoxically makes him beatable because he's finally vulnerable. The invincible machine had no weaknesses. The liberated man does. Lundgren played the transformation through his eyes, letting fear and humanity creep back into Drago's expression. He's no longer certain, no longer programmed. The defeat isn't about who lands the final punch, it's about who reclaims their soul first. Number 19, Rocky never raises his arms in victory. In the final moments after defeating Drago, Rocky doesn't celebrate like a traditional champion. No jumping, no roaring, no dominance pose. He looks exhausted, reflective, almost relieved rather than triumphant. Stallone specifically rejected the conventional winner's moment, believing Rocky's journey wasn't about glory, but about closure. The fight was never about proving superiority, it was about forgiving himself for Apollo's death. So when it's over, Rocky doesn't celebrate. He processes, he breathes. The crowd erupts around him, but Rocky remains still, centered, quiet. Stallone played the moment as private grief finally releasing its grip. The film ends with peace, not triumph. Rocky didn't need to beat Drago, he needed to survive him, and survival doesn't require celebration. Number 20, Rocky IV is a myth, not a sports film. Accuracy was never Stallone's goal, emotion was. The film operates like American folklore, exaggerated, symbolic, and morally clear in ways reality never is. It's the United States Cold War fairy tale. The training montages defy human biology. The fight itself would kill both participants. The political resolutions are fantasy, and none of it matters because the film isn't journalism, it's legend. Stallone structured Rocky IV like a morality play, complete with clear heroes, villains, suffering, and redemption. Every choice prioritizes emotional truth over factual accuracy. The snow-covered cabin, the sterile laboratory, the final speech about change. These aren't realistic details, they're symbolic ones. Rocky IV doesn't ask you to believe it happened, it asks you to believe it means something. Rocky IV remains one of the most culturally significant sports films ever made, not because of its realism, but because of its mythology. A film where training montages replaced dialogue, where symbolism overwhelmed subtlety, and where one man's guilt became a nation's Cold War catharsis. The near-fatal punches, the crowd that changed before the politicians, Drago's final words, Rocky's refusal to celebrate. Which hidden detail changed how you see the film, and what movie should we break down next?